Like 1, 2, 3?
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Now is the time for all good men and women to come to the aid of their country. 7 years ago, our fathers.
I'm ready to say the word.
Go ahead.
Now is the winter of our discontent, a glorious summer by the sun of York.
Lou Hirsh, from one retired member of Potomac and Chesapeake Association to another, welcome.
Thank you.
I know a little bit about your journey through the world of admissions from Michigan to Delaware, where you served as director of admissions. Tell us a little bit about some of the other stops along the way.
Well, one of the big ones for me was I started off life, like most people, really not anticipating a career in admissions. I anticipated a career teaching 16th and 17th century British literature and doing research in that area. And like many others, discovered somewhere in the 70s that there are absolutely, positively no jobs for people with backgrounds in the humanities, and started looking at other things and knew I wanted to stay in higher education. And admissions was one of the things that I started looking into, started talking with directors of admissions, and then learned a great deal. Found, for one thing, that most folks in admissions are enormously generous with their time, with their mentoring, with their interest in people who want to make this a profession, and learned enough. Responded to some job ads, including one at Michigan State, and was hired by a wonderful dean who took a huge chance on me. He hired someone with no previous admissions experience to do recruitment for his college, which was one of the small residential colleges at Michigan State. It's called James Madison College, and it's still going strong today. The only fly in the ointment for this wonderful program was it wasn't getting nearly enough students, and its declining enrollments were a concern. So I was hired to turn that around, and I began recruiting for that program, also working closely with the general Michigan State admissions staff, and did manage to double their enrollments within just a couple years, and spent really a wonderful stint from 1975 to 1983 working there. And in fact, they made me an honorary alum several years ago. That dean, who's still alive, he himself retired,
great.
referred to me as the guy who saved the college, and I still have a fondness for it and their students. 3 of the kids who were there while I was doing admissions for them during that period became Rhodes Scholars, and it was that's something else when you recruit a kid who goes on to that, and there have been others who have gone on to some really remarkable things. So that was the start.
That's fantastic. Most of us have good stories about mentors and mentoring along the way, and that's certainly a great one. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Potomac and Chesapeake Association, and how that involvement may have enhanced your career and led to leadership roles outside the institution where you worked.
Sure. One of the main sources, frankly, is a former president who happened to be a member of my staff, Susan Knight, now Susan Knight Muncie.
Potomac and Chesapeake president.
But a PCACAC president. And she was, at the time she was president, she was a colleague of mine in the office, and then eventually wound up working for me. In fact, when she moved out to Indiana for her first year out there, we even took her on as a regional rep for the office. And it was wonderful to see a couple things that you learned from Susan. First of all, it reinforced the sense that this is such a profession of relationships, of people who know people and love to talk with them and share a common set of interests and concerns, and that it was a real opportunity to make a difference. You think about it, there are very few professions in the world where the professional organization pulls together people from two different sides. I mean, you don't have, for example, the American Medical Association doesn't have doctors and patients as members. It just has doctors as members. We have admissions counselors and school counselors, and we pull them together. And it's a wonderful opportunity, first of all, in a very practical way, to find out what it is the other side does that annoys the hell out of their colleagues on the other side of the desk, as we like to say. That turns out to be hugely valuable. But it also leads to a ton of other collaborations, almost all of them designed to be in the best interest of kids. When admissions officers and school counselors are working well together, the major beneficiary is always the students who enroll at the high schools that have counselors who are concerned enough to establish these connections, and go to colleges that in turn are concerned enough to want to do the best possible job in helping kids find the right college fit for them. And so the leadership opportunities are really involved in making those relationships work in almost any number of ways. I mean, my own particular niche, largely under the influence of you, frankly, Dale, is admissions practices, because the thing that over the years has come to concern me the most is that I do see a problem, a growing problem in higher education, with a kind of disconnect between the lofty phrases that are in the mission statements of every single college and university in our country and what the practices are to recruit students and fund financial aid at these same institutions, and frankly, at a growing number of places. I don't think the two things correspond to each other. And that has to be a concern, a huge concern. So getting involved in the ethics aspect of it, listening to what folks have to say about things that concern them, following up, and trying to make things a little bit better, a little bit fairer, a little more honest, a little more transparent for students and parents in the process is something I find hugely rewarding.
You just did a very nice job of anticipating the next question that I was going to ask you. Well, as we conclude this little conversation, any particular words of advice that you would like to share with someone relatively new in the profession? You and I have seen a counseling focus, a marketing focus, an increasing technological focus in this work. Anything you want to say to some of the newer folks who've been joining us in recent years?
I don't pretend to be a font of all wisdom, but I will say this. When you get towards the end of your career, if you ask, what is it that you remember? What resonates? It's ultimately the students. It's the individual students, the ones who you remember as prospective students, sometimes as early as the sophomore, junior year of high school, and you first met them at a fair or at their school, and who subsequently applied and who subsequently enrolled. One of the most joyful things for me is just last week. I've been retired since June 30th, 2012. It's getting closer now to a year after the fact. And got a wonderful letter from parents addressed to the admissions office of Delaware. Please forward to Mr. Hirsh, simply telling me their son is a member of Delaware's class of 2013. They remember my talking with their son 4 years ago and agreeing to admit him despite some things in his record that gave them some pause and gave us some pause, and decided he was worth taking, and went ahead with that. He's graduating with honors. He's got a very nice job situation waiting for him. Loved his 4 years at Delaware, and obviously Delaware clearly loved having him. That's what it's about. That is the stuff you will remember. And so don't ever lose sight of that fact when you're interviewing a student in your office, meeting a student at a high school. For all the technology, all the marketing, all the branding, all of the other stuff going on, it is the people, those faces, those kids, and their parents who will stick with you and matter the most for you over time.
Lou Hirsh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. And Arthur.